A black man arrives at the Grandeur Manhattan, New York's most luxurious and sought-after address, ready for a night that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in his life. But what should have been a simple check-in turns into a spectacle of humiliation. The receptionist says his reservation is not in the system. Security is called. The tone of voice changes, the stares turn cold. And when he refuses to leave, he is dragged outside, beaten, and left out in the Fifth Avenue rain, treated as if he were invisible. But 20 minutes later, the impossible happens. The entire lobby collapses when the same employees who humiliated him are summoned by management and fired in front of everyone. No one understands what's happening until they discover that the man they just ejected was Marcus Whitfield, the real CEO of the group that controls the hotel. In a single night, arrogance met justice, and truth at last had a name and a face. Before we continue this story, please comment on which city or country you are watching from, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This is just the first twist in a story that will surprise you. Rain lashed against the glass doors of the Grandeur Manhattan as Marcus Whitfield walked through the revolving entrance. The firm sound of his leather shoes echoed through the immense lobby, reflected in the white marble and the crystal chandeliers that hung from the ceiling like glittering jewels. His brown leather jacket was almost dry. He had timed the exact moment between the car and the entrance. With his carry-on bag swaying behind him, he walked to the reception with the composure of someone who knows the standards of luxury hotels well and doesn't expect to be treated as an exception. The attendant was wearing a dark blue blazer and a gold name tag that read Jennifer Caldwell. She looked up from her computer, and for a second, her practiced smile faltered. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Grandeur Manhattan. How can I help you?" he said, in a polite tone, but without the friendliness he had shown minutes earlier to the white couple who had just checked in. "I have a reservation for the presidential suite in Whitfield's name." Ooh, Marcus's voice was firm, clear and polite, but with the authority of someone who wasn't there to be tested. Jennifer's fingers began typing with exaggerated slowness, her brow furrowing as if deciphering a riddle. I didn't find anything with that name. Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" Out of the corner of his eye, Marcus noticed a tall man in a dark suit approaching. The silver name tag on his chest read Derek Ashford, night manager. His posture was impeccable, but his gaze betrayed judgment. "I'm absolutely sure. Could you double-check, please? Marcus Whitfield. The reservation was confirmed by the call center last week." Jennifer typed a few more keys and shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's nothing here." Marcus calmly opened his jacket, taking out his ID and a printed copy of the confirmation. "Here are my documents and the reservation confirmation. Please verify using the confirmation number." The manager, Derek, approached, each step echoing across the floor like an announcement of conflict. A few guests paused to watch discreetly. Marcus, unhurriedly, took a small black notebook and a fountain pen from his briefcase. "While they're checking, could you please tell me your full name and employee number?" he said with a friendly smile. "Standard procedure?" Jennifer's face hardened. "Sir, this isn't necessary." "Actually, yes," Marcus wrote calmly, the sound of the pen scratching on the paper filling the silence that enveloped the room. "I would also like a copy of the hotel's rules and the name of the general manager." Derek interjected, taking charge. "Is there a problem, sir?" "None, just registering my attempt to obtain the service I paid for." "If you don't have a valid reservation, you'll need to leave," Derek replied, in a tone that mixed threat and feigned politeness. Marcus looked up without changing his tone of voice. "I understand. Then I would like a formal document explaining the reason for the refusal and a copy of the hosting policies that support this decision." The murmur in the lobby grew louder. Couples glanced sideways, pretending to fiddle with their phones. A gentleman in a grey suit watched with a disapproving expression. Jennifer froze. The hands that had typed confidently now trembled on the keyboard. "I also need the contact information for the Grandeur Group's headquarters, please," Marcus added, writing something down in his notebook. "Sir, if you continue to harass my team—" "Documentation is not harassment, Mr. Ashford," Marcus interrupted calmly. "It's simply a record of a fact." Silence filled the lobby. The only sounds were the rain pattering against the windows and the pen gliding across the paper. In just a few minutes, that small gesture, taking notes without shouting, had transformed all the arrogance of the place into visible nervousness. No one there had any idea who the man in the brown jacket standing before them really was. But that night, in the heart of Fifth Avenue, the Grandeur Manhattan was about to learn the meaning of silent justice. Every word, every glance, every movement was recorded with surgical precision in Marcus Whitfield's small black notebook. His calmness contrasted sharply with the growing discomfort behind the counter. Jennifer Caldwell's posture, once practiced and polished, was beginning to crumble under the weight of her own nervousness. Her fingers drummed on the marble countertop, trying to disguise her irritation. Then, lowering her voice, she murmured something that made the air in the lobby freeze. A racial slur, whispered as if it could disappear into the sound of the air conditioning. But several guests heard it. A murmur of astonishment swept through the room. Marcus's pen stopped mid-sentence. He looked up, serene, steady. "Excuse me, Mrs. Caldwell, could you repeat that, just so I can write it down correctly in the record?" Her face turned pale. An elegant woman in a suit who was waiting in line crossed her arms. "I heard perfectly," she said loudly, pulling out her cell phone. "And I can testify if necessary." Marcus nodded politely. "Thank you, madam." He turned to the counter without raising his voice. "I would like to speak to the general manager or the person in charge of guest relations now, please." Derek Ashford appeared immediately, placing his hands on the marble counter. His tailored suit did not disguise the tension in his shoulders. "The general manager is unavailable, and you are disrupting service." "Documenting a discriminatory act isn't being disruptive, Mr. Ashford," Marcus replied slowly. "It's exercising a right and demanding respect." Derek discreetly pressed a button on his jacket. Within seconds, 3 security guards appeared from different points in the lobby, walking in synchronized steps. In front, Vincent Braddock, the hotel's head of security, a former police officer with an inflexible demeanor. Behind him, Tyler and Raymond, with hard expressions and rehearsed gestures. The lobby, once bustling with conversation, fell into a tense silence. Cell phones began to appear in the hands of guests, some discreetly, others openly filming. A young mother hugged her son, trying to distract him with a toy. "Is there a problem?" Vincent asked, his hand resting near the belt where the stun gun holster was visible. "No problem at all," Marcus replied before Derek could intervene. "Just trying to confirm my reservation and register this service." He turned to a new page in the notebook. "And your full names, please?" Vincent's jaw clenched. "Head of Security Braddock, these are officers Tyler and Raymond, and you need to leave if you are not a registered guest." "I'm just trying to confirm my registration," Marcus replied calmly. "I've already explained this to Mr. Ashford and Mrs. Caldwell. I have a confirmed reservation that they simply can't locate. I'm just asking that they follow the correct protocol." The 3 security guards stood imposingly beside him. The sound of Tyler's boots scraping the marble floor echoed through the lobby. Raymond crossed his arms, his name tag reflecting the light from the chandeliers. "I reiterate my request," said Marcus, his voice firm and measured. "Please verify my reservation under the name Marcus Whitfield and provide me with a written justification for any refusal. I also request a copy of your guest service policies." Derek and Jennifer exchanged quick, knowing and anxious glances. Jennifer forced a fake smile. "Sir, as we've already said, there's nothing in the system." The crowd grew larger. Businessmen, families, tourists. Some watched with indignation, others with shame. Cell phones recorded. Employees hesitated, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. "Mr. Braddock," said Marcus, writing calmly, "I confirm that you are aware that I'm only requesting the contracted service and documentation of this interaction." Vincent took a deep breath. "Sir, the hotel has the right to refuse service." "I also know American law, Mr. Braddock," Marcus replied, without changing his tone. "And it's clear about racial discrimination. Now please just spell your last name for the record." The silence that followed was almost absolute. A messenger dropped a suitcase. The sound reverberated like thunder. A curious child asked too loudly, "Mom, why are those men being mean to that young man?" Derek Ashford's face turned red, and at that moment the weight of the scene ceased to be mere embarrassment. It had become living proof of something much greater. "This is your final warning. Go away now." "Or what, Mr. Ashford?" asked Marcus Whitfield, without interrupting the steady stroke of his pen on the black notebook. "Please be specific. I want to quote you precisely." More cell phones were raised among the crowd. The lobby of the Grandeur Manhattan now resembled a silent theater, with dozens of witnesses holding their breath. A businessman in an expensive suit stepped forward, hesitating, ready to intervene. The security guards adjusted their positions, closing in. Marcus, still writing, seemed the only calm man in that minefield of tension. "I'm still waiting for confirmation of my reservation," he said in a clear, calm voice that echoed among the crystal chandeliers. "And I continue to request fair and documented service. Nothing more than that." Tension vibrated in the air, like electricity before a storm. Vincent Braddock's boots crunched on the marble as he took another step, the dry sound reverberating through the lobby. Tyler and Raymond moved in sync, forming a containment triangle around Marcus. The guests watched motionless, the glow of their cell phones reflecting off the gilded columns. "Last chance," Vincent growled, adjusting his belt and holster. "Put that notebook away and get out." Marcus continued writing impassively. "I'm simply recording your names and actions, gentlemen. I ask that you maintain a professional distance." A vein throbbed in Vincent's temple. Suddenly he lunged forward. A brutal shove to Marcus's chest sent him staggering. The notebook slipped from his hands and slid across the marble floor like a piece of truth escaping control. Several guests gasped in astonishment. "Leave him alone!" shouted a woman. "Don't make things worse," Marcus replied, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "We can resolve this properly." But Vincent Braddock grabbed his left arm, twisting it tightly. The brown leather of his jacket creaked under the pressure. Tyler stepped forward to the right, holding his other arm. Marcus reacted instinctively. He planted his feet firmly, and with his elbow struck Tyler squarely in the chest. The security guard stumbled backward and crashed into a side table laden with champagne glasses. The sound of the crystal shattering on the floor was like an explosion of pent-up indignation. "Stop resisting!" Vincent shouted, squeezing the executive's arm tighter. Raymond lunged forward, punching Marcus in the abdomen. The blow knocked the air from his lungs, but he remained standing, panting, yet dignified. Derek Ashford's voice cut through the chaos. "Get him out of here, no matter what. He's trespassing on private property and acting violently." The crowd reacted with a mixture of horror and outrage. An elegant lady wearing a pearl necklace shouted, "This is absurd! You're beating a guest!" A businessman tried to approach, but Jennifer Caldwell stepped in front of him, opening her arms and using her usual sweet tone. "Sir, please keep your distance. Security is simply following protocol." Vincent grabbed Marcus by the neck, trying to force him to the ground. The executive struggled to breathe, but didn't give up. His expensive watch reflected the light as he held his attacker's arm, trying to relieve the pressure. Tyler, now recovered, returned to the fight and landed a blow to his ribs. The sharp crack echoed through the lobby, followed by shouts of protest. A child began to cry, and a mother hugged her tightly. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said, his voice hoarse but firm. The response came in the form of more violence. Raymond threw a punch that struck him squarely in the mouth. Blood splattered across the white floor. A tooth popped out and rolled, discreet and tragic like a lost pearl. "Look at the cameras," a woman shouted. "Everything is being recorded." Derek adjusted his tie and declared, theatrically, "This man is being removed for trespassing on private property and assaulting our team. Security is simply following protocol." But a teenage girl raised her cell phone, her voice firm and indignant. "That's a lie. He was just writing in his notebook." Marcus's grip on the neck tightened, his face already flushed, but his eyes never left Derek Ashford's. And something in that look, calm, defiant, unforgiving, made the manager take a step back. The crowd watched in silence. Every scream, every drop of blood, every camera flash transformed that moment into history. "You're not going to get away with this," someone shouted. Jennifer Caldwell's laugh cut through the air, nervous and forced. "He's the one who's going to get in trouble. Everyone saw him attack our team." But nobody believed it. They had seen the notebook, the calm requests, the first push. They had seen the truth. Marcus Whitfield fell to his knees, but he did not surrender. He rose slowly, staggering, blood trickling down his chin. His torn jacket hung from his shoulders like a banner of resistance. "Remember this moment," he said, his voice echoing throughout the lobby. Even wounded, bleeding and humiliated, his dignity was indestructible. Outside, the rain was pouring down. Lightning flashed across the sky as he limped down Fifth Avenue toward the brightly lit payphone on the corner. And the Grandeur Manhattan, which once symbolized power and exclusivity, had just become the setting for one of the city's most shameful nights. Each step sent a new wave of pain through Marcus Whitfield's ribs, but he refused to show weakness. His soaked shoes crunched with every step on the Fifth Avenue sidewalk, and his wet clothes weighed like lead. Still, his posture remained erect, because dignity was the one thing he never let go of. The public phone, illuminated by the storm, looked like a beacon in the darkness. It promised connection. It promised revenge. Marcus's trembling fingers dialed the number from memory. The blood that trickled from his lip mingled with the rain, dripping onto the metal keypad. His ribs protested as he leaned against the side of the booth, waiting for the call to connect. "Natalie Sterling speaking," replied a firm, professional voice on the other end of the line. "The time has come," Marcus murmured, his voice hoarse from the exertion. "Is everything ready?" There was a short pause, followed by the sound of papers being flipped through. "Everything is signed and filed. The acquisition was completed an hour ago. You are officially the owner of the Grandeur Hotel chain and all its properties, including the Grandeur Manhattan." Natalie's voice hardened. "What happened? You look hurt." "They showed us what they really are," Marcus replied, wiping the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "Send the team now." "I'm sending it now. The lawyers will be there in 5 minutes. Our security team is closer. Would you like me to call for medical assistance?" "There's no time," he replied, wiping his face with his handkerchief. "Just bring everyone here." He hung up and took a few steps back into the torrential rain. The reflection in a shop window showed his face marked with blood and bruises, his ruined suit and his leather jacket, a gift from his mother, torn. Using the rainwater, he cleaned what he could, straightened his tie, and combed his wet hair back. 2 black SUVs appeared, skidding around the corner, followed by an executive sedan. They stopped by the curb, their headlights cutting through the curtain of rain. The professional bodyguards descended first, all in dark suits with firm posture and discreet earpieces. At the front, Leonard Hayes, Marcus's new head of security, opened his umbrella. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked, observing the injuries on his face. "I am," Marcus replied, straightening up with effort. "Let's finish this." The doors of the sedan opened and 3 lawyers emerged, leather briefcases in hand. They surrounded Marcus as he strode resolutely toward the hotel that minutes before had forcibly evicted him. The scene seemed choreographed, a silent march of justice in the rain. As I walked through the revolving doors of the Grandeur Manhattan once more, a murmur filled the lobby. Guests who had previously filmed the assault now raised their cell phones again, but this time to record the return of the man no one expected to see again so soon. Derek Ashford and Jennifer Caldwell froze behind the counter, their air of superiority vanishing in a second. Vincent Braddock stepped forward, his hand on his baton. "We thought we had already advised you to leave." Leonard Hayes stepped forward firmly. "If you touch him again, you will be arrested for assault. Stay away." His voice was cold, technical, unquestionable. Derek tried to maintain his composure. "This is private property." "Actually," interrupted the lead lawyer, opening the folder, "it's not anymore." He held up a stack of documents, the rustling of the pages overlapping the hum of the rain. 45 minutes ago, Mr. Marcus Whitfield became the majority owner of the Grandeur Hotel chain, including this establishment. The silence was absolute. Jennifer's cell phone fell onto the counter, the impact echoing. Derek paled. Vincent's hand recoiled from the baton. Marcus stepped forward, his voice echoing between the golden columns. "Derek Ashford, Jennifer Caldwell, Vincent Braddock, Tyler and Raymond, you are all dismissed for cause, effective immediately." He turned to Leonard. "Please escort them to the exit. Their personal belongings will be delivered afterward." "You can't do that," Derek stammered. "I can, and I am doing it," Marcus replied. "Your behavior was recorded by dozens of witnesses. Aggression, discrimination, destruction of property." His tone was glacial. "You're lucky you're only getting fired. Now get out." Leonard's team carried out the orders with precision, without brutality, just firmness. Jennifer was crying, her face contorted in despair. Derek tried to protest, but backed down when he saw his own resignation letter in the lawyer's hands. Vincent, Tyler and Raymond were the first to be escorted out, their name tags collected. The same doors that had closed on Marcus Whitfield minutes before were now closing behind them, a full circle of justice. The lobby, once a scene of humiliation, became the stage for a historic turning point. The guests, still filming, watched the bloodied and serene man recover what had always belonged to him. And in that instant, under the cold light of the chandeliers and the distant sound of rain, the Grandeur Manhattan learned a definitive lesson. Power changes hands silently, but justice, when it arrives, echoes throughout the city. Some watched in shame, others in complete astonishment, all unsure how to react to the sudden reversal of power. From the back of the lobby, an older black woman dressed in a housekeeper's uniform caught Marcus Whitfield's eye. It was Evelyn Morrison, who had worked at the Grandeur Manhattan for 30 years. She had endured humiliations, injustices, and forced silences, always keeping her head held high. Her teary eyes met Marcus's, and in that brief contact there was something greater than words, the recognition of a lifetime of waiting for justice. She nodded discreetly, and the gesture carried the weight of decades. Derek Ashford, the last to be escorted out, turned around before passing through the revolving doors. "You're going to regret this," he spat. "You don't know who you're messing with." Marcus, still in the center of the lobby, with dried blood on his lip and his torn jacket dripping with rain, replied without hesitation, "No, Derek. You were the one who didn't know who you were dealing with." The doors swung one last time and closed behind all those who had humiliated the man who was now their new owner. The symmetry was perfect. the justice poetic. Those who had thrown him out into the rain now faced the same storm. Staff and guests remained motionless, torn between astonishment and discomfort. Marcus was still injured, but standing, a living symbol of what happens when silence is broken. Evelyn stepped forward, her presence radiating a kind of quiet strength, the fruit of years of waiting and resignation. Morning light streamed through the hotel's large windows, casting long shadows on the marble. The usual morning bustle had been replaced by groups of employees whispering, while their cell phones displayed videos that were already circulating on social media. "Did you see what they did to him?" murmured a young valet, showing the screen to a colleague. "And he returned as the owner," the other replied, astonished. The images spread like wildfire. Within hours, reporters began lining Fifth Avenue, their vans parked in rows, antennas pointed at the grey sky. Inside the hotel, maids and bellhops stopped their work to watch the coverage on the lobby's large-screen televisions. Scandal at luxury hotel, beaten new owner returns and fires racist staff. The caption ran along the bottom of the screens, while the hashtags were dominated by the story. Evelyn Morrison watched the news report, standing beside her cleaning cart, her eyes brimming with tears. 30 years of painful memories flashed before her eyes like a film. A few meters away, Julian Carter, the messenger, adjusted his cap and took a deep breath, remembering each night he had been mistreated, each customer who was given preferential treatment at the expense of others. The elevator opened with a soft sound, and Marcus Whitfield emerged. In the daylight, his injuries seemed even more severe, his face swollen, his lip cracked, his jaw marked by bruises. But his gaze was serene, almost imperturbable. He wore a new, impeccable suit and carried on his arm the torn brown leather jacket, a symbol of the humiliation that had not destroyed him. Beside her, Natalie Sterling walked with the tablet in hand, already coordinating the actions. "The press wants a statement," she said. "The networks are collapsing, and the former team's lawyer is threatening to sue for wrongful termination." "Let them try," Marcus replied, without taking his eyes off the lobby. His eyes first met Evelyn, then Julian. "Those two. I want to talk to them." Evelyn approached with cautious steps. Decades of obedience had shaped her posture, but now something new shone in her face. Julian joined her, standing upright, his gaze determined. "Mr. Whitfield," Evelyn began, her voice soft but firm. "I've been here for 30 years, and what I've seen done to you, it wasn't the first time." She shook her head slowly. "Not by a long shot." "Tell me everything," said Marcus, leading them to a private corner of the lobby. During the next hour, Evelyn and Julian reopened old wounds in the house. She spoke of the reduced salaries of black employees, of shifts being swapped to favor others, and of harassment complaints that mysteriously disappeared from the records. Julian added, "The system was clear. Wealthy white guests were given priority. The rest paid more. Rooms disappeared. Belongings were diverted." Natalie typed everything, the tablet reflecting the cold glare of the lights. Marcus's face hardened with each word. When the silence fell, he simply said, "Show me the records." Evelyn looked around nervously. "I kept hidden copies in the supply closet, and the real payroll book," she took a deep breath, "is behind a loose panel in the basement." Julian confirmed, "I saw it. I know exactly where it is." Marcus stood up. "Evelyn, as of today, you are our new Director of Employee Relations. Julian, you're taking over as head of security. You know this place better than anyone." The two looked at each other in disbelief. "Sir, are you sure?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. "More than ever," Marcus replied with a half-smile. "And please, call me Marcus." He glanced at his watch. "Meet me in my office in 20 minutes. Bring everything you have." As they walked away, Marcus Whitfield observed the lobby that had once been a symbol of exclusion. Now, under new management, it was becoming the starting point for something much bigger, the reconstruction of a history with justice, memory, and power. As the staff dispersed, a movement outside caught Marcus Whitfield's attention. Through the glass windows of the Grandeur Manhattan, he spotted Derek Ashford, Jennifer Caldwell, and the former security team gathered around a local television station van. Derek gestured furiously at the cameras, while Jennifer cried theatrically, playing the victim. "They haven't given up yet," Natalie Sterling observed, noticing Marcus's attentive gaze. "Neither do we," he replied coldly. Shortly after, already in his new office, the same one that had once been Derek Ashford's sanctuary of discrimination and arrogance, Marcus began emptying drawers and shelves. Photos of Derek with politicians and businessmen were piled into a box. Among the objects, a paperweight with the image of an eagle and the motto, "Order and Hierarchy," made him clench his fists. Evelyn Morrison arrived first, carrying an old shoebox crammed with yellowed papers and photographs. "I've kept this since 1995, he explained, placing the material on the table. "Every insult, every injustice, every dismissal without explanation." Right behind him came Julian Carter, panting, carrying 3 bulky ledgers. "I found this behind the basement panel, 2 sets of records, one for audits, the other with the actual numbers. Different salaries for different people depending on skin color. Can you believe it?" Natalie immediately began scanning the documents, her fingers running across the tablet. "This is devastating. Years of evidence, discrimination, fraud, harassment, and financial abuse." She looked up. "They'll react when this becomes public." "Let them react," Marcus replied, examining a falsified payroll sheet. "The truth cannot be erased." They worked all morning, reconstructing the past like detectives of institutional injustice. Each sheet, each signature told a story. Diverted bonuses, shelved complaints, black employees systematically punished, blocked promotions. "Look at this," said Julian, flipping through a handwritten spreadsheet. "They categorized guests. Here, Profile A gets an upgrade. Profile C, reservations cancelled." Evelyn crossed her arms bitterly. "And we know what Profile C meant." Outside, the sun rose over the city, casting light on decades of shadows. In the lobby, the changes were already visible. Evelyn was wearing director's clothes, no longer a housekeeper's uniform. Julian, in a suit and security badge, gave orders with ease. A new day dawned at the Grandeur Manhattan, and with it, the promise of a historic success. Hours later, twilight enveloped New York when a black Mercedes pulled up in front of the Metropolitan Club, a luxurious haunt frequented only by the city's old elite. Its headlights reflected off the wet cobblestones as Harrison Pembroke, grey-haired and in a tailored suit, calmly stepped out of the car with the composure of someone accustomed to being in charge. The doorman bowed his head reverently. Inside, the club's private room reeked of antique leather and imported cigars. Around the long mahogany table, 12 men waited, the circle of Fifth Avenue, the most powerful group in New York high society. Harrison sat down at the head of the table, slowly loosening his tie. "Gentlemen," he began, in a controlled, deep voice, "we have a serious problem at the Grandeur Manhattan." Garrett Sullivan, his right-hand man, handed out tablets. The screens showed videos from the previous night, the fight, the firings, Marcus Whitfield's triumphant return. "This man bought the Grandeur hotel chain through shell companies. He slipped past us without a trace," Harrison said, his tone tinged with contempt. "Now he's tearing down our people and promoting those who shouldn't be promoted." Theodore Blackwell, the media mogul, cleaned his glasses. "I can shape the narrative. Portray him as a radical and aggressive outsider. 2 image cuts are all it takes." Garrett nodded. "I've already edited it. The version that will be released shows him attacking the security guards without provocation." Harrison raised his glass of whiskey. "Excellent, but we need more." Preston, organize pickets at the hotel entrances early tomorrow morning. Malcolm, your restaurants are terminating their contracts with their kitchens immediately. The men took notes in silence. Decades of power are not lost without resistance. Harrison Pembroke looked at the group and concluded, "We've destroyed people like that before. What he did was declare war on old New York, and we don't lose wars." The clinking of ice in glasses broke the silence, as if the sound heralded the beginning of a new battle between the past and the future. "And what about the legal side?" asked Stuart Langford, senior partner at the city's largest law firm. "We can sue the hotel for harassment and wrongful termination on behalf of the former employees, take them to court, drain their resources, delay every step." Harrison Pembroke's eyes gleamed. "Do it, and make sure Judge Townsend receives the files. He owes me more than one favor." He turned to Garrett Sullivan. "I want everything on Marcus Whitfield, where he came from, what he owns, who he knows, what he's hiding. Everyone has something to hide." Garrett consulted the tablet and replied coldly, "We've already started. He came from humble beginnings, grew up in a Brooklyn suburb, worked while he studied, founded a tech company and sold it for millions." He paused. Clean record. Harrison's gaze narrowed, a cold half-smile forming on his lips. "Then dig deeper. Every man has a weak spot. You just have to find where it bleeds." The room was enveloped in a somber energy as plans took shape. Douglas Harrington, who owns half the city's commercial real estate, suggested cutting contracts and collecting loans from any company connected to Marcus. Lawrence Kensington, president of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, proposed launching a campaign to question the safety of the hotel under the new management. "Remember," Harrison said, refilling his whiskey glasses, "we're not just defending a hotel. We're defending the system we've built. If this man succeeds, others will follow, and our way of life will crumble." A chorus of murmurs echoed around the table. These were men accustomed to power, forged in decades of influence and backroom deals. Old New York, sitting before him, was ready to fight for its survival. As the clock struck nearly midnight, Harrison Pembroke approached the window, watching the city lights reflect off the skyscrapers. Garrett Sullivan joined him, tablet in hand. "The first protesters arrive at 7 in the morning. We've managed to get people from 3 different groups, former employees, fake activists, and associations linked to unions. Everything's ready. The press, too." From above, the illuminated facade of the Grandeur Manhattan gleamed in the distance. Harrison's reflection in the glass showed a slight smile of disdain. "Make sure our cameras capture the best images. Tears, signs, angry customers. Make it look spontaneous." "And what about Evelyn Morrison and Julian Carter?" Garrett asked. "The ones he promoted." Harrison's gaze darkened. "You think I've forgotten? Find out everything. Debts, troublesome relatives, any past mistakes. Everyone has something they'd rather hide. I want them to regret choosing the wrong side." The businessmen began to rise, donning expensive coats, each with a mission: manipulation of the press, political pressure, economic sabotage, legal defamation. It was an old playbook, perfected over generations, and they knew it by heart. "And make this perfectly clear to your contacts," Harrison shouted before they left. "Anyone who does business with the Grandeur Manhattan will no longer do business with us. None." Heads nodded, silent but resolute. In the New York business world, that phrase was a corporate death sentence. Contracts would be cancelled, accounts frozen, doors closed. When the room emptied, only Harrison and Garrett remained. "And what if we don't find anything against him?" Garrett asked quietly. The old businessman turned around, his face half hidden by the dim light. "So we invented it." He raised his glass. "I didn't spend 40 years shaping this city to see it taken over by an idealist who thinks justice is enough. Outside, the first lights of dawn tinted the horizon. Inside the Metropolitan Club, the clinking of ice in glasses and the smell of expensive whiskey marked the end of the meeting and the beginning of the retaliation. Hours later, dawn tinged the Grandeur Manhattan with soft shades of pink. Marcus Whitfield, standing by the window of his penthouse, watched the activity below. Posters fluttered in the wind. Save our jobs, dangerous management, and others even worse, some with racial slurs disguised as irony. The cell phone vibrated, another alert. The headline from the New York Business Journal flashed across the screen: hostile takeover of historic hotel. Employees allege wrongful termination and violence. The images showed only manipulated cuts. The exact moment he reacted, but never the first blow. The manipulation script was running. A knock at the door. Natalie Sterling entered, impeccably dressed in her dark grey suit, her arms full of tablets and newspapers. "It's bad," she said, spreading the material out on the table. "The headlines are coordinated. All the major news outlets are repeating the same narrative. Former employees have given interviews alleging persecution and abuse." She held up a tablet containing the Manhattan Financial Times. "They're portraying you as a violent businessman, an outsider who bought a hotel just to get revenge." Marcus took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the headlines. The game had begun, but unlike them, he wasn't playing the game to maintain power. He played to expose everything. Marcus Whitfield's own face stared back at him on the screen, frozen in the moment, as he struggled to defend himself, exactly as they wanted it to look: angry, dangerous, out of control. Channel 4. "New York is doing special coverage," Natalie Sterling announced, turning on the television. On screen, Derek Ashford appeared in a brightly lit studio, wearing an impeccable blue suit and a deliberately wounded expression. "I tried to calm the situation," he said, his voice choked with feigned emotion, "but Mr. Whitfield lost control. We had to act to protect our guests." Marcus turned off the TV with a simple touch. "How is this affecting business?" Natalie's tablet vibrated in response. 3 companies have cancelled conferences. Restaurant suppliers are threatening to suspend contracts. And, she hesitated, some board members have called an emergency meeting. They're worried about the hotel's image. And a new alert lit up Marcus's phone. It was Julian Carter. "Sir, there are protesters blocking the employees' entrance. Evelyn and others are being insulted. I need authorization to act." "Send security guards through the garage and ensure everyone gets in," Marcus ordered, already heading towards the door. "And call legal counsel. I want to know who's funding these protests." They descended together to the lobby. Outside, press vans lined Fifth Avenue, antennas erected against the morning sky. Inside, the restaurant was almost empty. Cafe patrons avoided the embarrassment of crossing the commotion. Some guests gathered by the windows, watching the protests with cautious curiosity. "Council meeting in 30 minutes, Natalie reminded, glancing at her watch. "They'll be joining via video conference. Nobody wants to be seen crossing the picket line." Marcus adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. "So let's give them what they asked for. Numbers. Prepare the revenue projections, the employee satisfaction history, and all the complaints filed against the previous management." They crossed the lobby. The new employees worked with focus and silence, feigning normalcy amidst the chaos. A young black receptionist looked up, visibly tense. Marcus nodded slightly, conveying confidence. In the conference room, 12 faces appeared on the screens. The board of directors of the Hotel Grandeur was meeting. Neutral expressions, some frankly hostile. "Mr. Whitfield," began Philip Montgomery, chairman of the board, coldly, "we are deeply concerned about recent events." "The hotel's reputation is finally reflecting reality," Marcus replied calmly. Yesterday I uncovered evidence of discrimination, fraud, and labor abuses. You want to talk numbers? Then let's talk numbers. Natalie projected the spreadsheets onto the screen, detailed charts showing wage differences between whites and blacks, covered up records of harassment, suppressed guest complaints. "This is inflammatory," protested Rebecca Ashton, a veteran counselor, adjusting her pearl necklace. Marcus crossed his hands. For years, the hotel maintained the highest standards of oppression. That's over now. He stood up. "Excuse me. I need to make sure our team can work safely." "Mr. Whitfield," interrupted Montgomery, his voice growing stiff, "if you persist with this crusade, we may be forced to reconsider your position." Marcus turned slowly, his gaze steady. "Reassess as much as you want. I retain controlling interest. They can't remove me without just cause, and all my decisions are documented." The silence that followed was thick. Advisors watched him without responding. He simply nodded and left the room. In the hallway, Evelyn Morrison awaited him, her expression downcast but determined. "Mr. Whitfield," she said softly, "do you have a minute?" Inside the office, she took an old, heavy, leather-bound book out of her bag. "I've kept this for 20 years, he explained. "Records of everything, embezzled wages, unpaid hours, harassment. There are also copies of emails, photos, recordings, everything they tried to erase." Marcus flipped through the notebook. Each page was a stifled scream. Dates, names, evidence. "That's exactly what we need, Evelyn. Why didn't you tell us before?" She let out a bitter sigh, but with a new glint in her eyes. Who would listen to us? But now... She patted the book lightly. "Now maybe someone will finally listen." Through the window, the distant sound of the protesters echoed, but it seemed less threatening. Marcus carefully closed the book, that small volume that could rewrite the hotel's fate. And for the first time since the storm began, he felt that power was returning to the right hands. The basement of the Grandeur Manhattan felt like a trip back in time. Marcus Whitfield descended first, illuminating the narrow concrete steps with his cell phone flashlight. The air down there was thick, heavy with the smell of mold, old paper, and secrets kept for decades. Behind him, Evelyn Morrison held her ledger firmly, while Julian Carter and Natalie Sterling followed closely behind, each with their own flashlight. "Watch out for the third step," Evelyn warned, her voice echoing softly through the space. "It's been loose since I started here, over 20 years ago." As they descended, the sound of their footsteps echoed off the damp walls. The basement opened into a labyrinth of dusty metal shelves, filled with boxes and folders with faded labels, the physical memory of half a century of the hotel's history. "The old records are in Section D," said Evelyn, pointing to the left corner. "Before computers, everything was kept there. Mr. Gerald Whitmore, the manager in the 90s, was obsessed with keeping paper copies." They split up to cover more ground. The sound of Marcus's footsteps mingled with the rustling of boxes as he ran his fingers over almost illegible labels. Suddenly, the beam of light from his flashlight caught an inscription in red. "Personnel, confidential, 1985-1999. "This way," he called. The others approached, forming a circle around the box. Inside, hundreds of employee index cards, all neatly lined up. Several bore red stamps, terminated or special attention. Natalie flipped through a battery of papers, her expression hardening in the cold light. "Look at this. Reasons for dismissal, inappropriate behavior, guest complaints, below standards, but only on the files of black employees." Julian whistled softly, opening another box. "You need to see this." He held up a thick, yellowed envelope full of money. More envelopes accompanied it, all dated and with initials. "Undercover payments," Natalie murmured. "Bribes, kickbacks." "Keep searching," Marcus ordered, moving along the shelves. The beam of light swept across old furniture, broken suitcases, and finally a huge metal filing cabinet in the corner. The cabinet was sturdy, marked by years of use, and protected by a rusty electronic lock. "That's it," Evelyn said, her voice low. "The special cabinet. Only the managers had access. I'd see them come down here late at night when they thought no one was looking." Julian examined the lock. Old electronic system. "Must have a hidden keypad." He ran his fingers along the side. "Here." A panel slid open, revealing a series of buttons. "Any ideas about the code?" Marcus asked. Evelyn flipped through her notebook. "Try 1923, the year the hotel opened." Nothing. "Wait," said Natalie, typing something quickly. "The hotel's tax registration number." She typed 6 digits. A sharp click echoed. The lock opened. Inside, more envelopes, but also photographs, receipts, and small leather notebooks filled with notes. Marcus picked one up. The pages were filled with meticulous handwriting, detailing payments to police officers, judges, tax inspectors, and even local politicians. "This goes far beyond discrimination," Natalie whispered, recording everything with her cell phone. "It's institutionalized corruption." A distant rumble caused the group to freeze. "Just the subway," Julian said, trying to sound calm. "But there's something I need to show you." He led them down a narrow corridor to a hidden room filled with aging computer equipment. Old servers lined the wall, their green lights flickering slowly. "The analog surveillance system," Julian explained. "They updated the cameras upstairs, but they never erased the old discs. Everything is still here. Hallways, offices, meetings, even private conversations." Natalie's eyes lit up. "How long have these recordings been stored?" "At least 5 years," he replied, already typing on an old keyboard. The screens came to life, displaying grainy images, the behind-the-scenes of decades of silence. "We need to take this," Marcus decided. "Can you remove the discs?" "Yes, sir," said Julian, already loosening the cables with precision. "I can install everything in Natalie's office today." While Evelyn and Marcus gathered the most incriminating documents, the silence in the basement seemed increasingly dense, as if the secrets kept there were resisting being revealed. "It's past midnight," Natalie murmured. "We'd better leave before someone notices." They stacked the boxes, trying not to make a sound. When they reached the top of the stairs, Evelyn looked back at the darkness of the basement. 20 years, she said softly. 20 years watching them hurt people, believing they would never be held accountable. Now maybe they will. Up there, the hotel slept beneath a veil of luxury and darkness. But at that moment, for the first time, the truth began to awaken. And there would be no turning back. Some night shift employees waved to Marcus Whitfield as he walked down the hall, carrying boxes of documents toward Natalie Sterling's office. Outside, the protesters had dispersed, but the wet signs were still scattered across the sidewalk, visible through the large windows of the brightly lit lobby. Natalie's office was on the mezzanine, modern, glass enclosed, overlooking the main atrium. She made room on the desk while Julian Carter connected the hard drives to the main computer. "This is going to take a while," Natalie warned, observing the endless stream of files on the screen. "Days, maybe weeks." "Take all the time you need," Marcus replied, adjusting the sleeves of his jacket. "But do it right. Document everything." He looked at the small team gathered. Natalie, focused, Julian testing connections, Evelyn Morrison holding the ledger against her chest as if it were a reliquary. "They thought they could bury their secrets," said Marcus, looking out the window. "But they forgot that time always collects its due." The grand hall of the Grandeur Manhattan shone under the glow of crystal chandeliers. Shades of black and gold adorned the tables. The sound of smooth jazz filled the air with elegance. It was a night of celebration, the beginning of a new era. Marcus, in a perfectly tailored black suit, greeted guests and staff with a genuine smile. "Very elegant, Mr. Whitfield," joked Julian, now in his new security chief uniform, his badge gleaming under the lights. He surveyed the room with professional attention, the stark antithesis of the truculence that had reigned there months before. Evelyn, dressed in a discreet yet imposing lilac dress, coordinated her newly promoted team. The walls were adorned with old and recent photos of the employees, a tribute to those who had kept the hotel alive despite decades of neglect. Television cameras captured every detail as journalists and business people mingled with the workers. New York Business Journal reporter Christine Reynolds approached Marcus, microphone in hand. "Mr. Whitfield, how does it feel to see such a profound transformation in such a short time?" Marcus looked at Natalie, who was presenting the hotel's new initiatives to a group of reporters. "This is not a transformation," he replied calmly. "It's simply recognition. These people have always been here. They've always been excellent. They just needed to be seen." The night unfolded like a dream. The kitchen staff received a standing ovation. The housekeepers were honored and given bonuses. Even white employees who had denounced injustices were celebrated. Marcus raised a glass of champagne, his firm voice echoing through the room. "To the true heroes of the Grandeur Manhattan, those who resisted, those who fought, those who never lost faith in justice, this is your night." The applause that followed filled the hall. Evelyn discreetly wiped away tears as her granddaughter hugged her. Julian watched, his chest swelling with pride, but at exactly 10:45 p.m. the music stopped. Two police officers walked through the main entrance with firm steps, carrying brown paper envelopes. An immediate silence fell. "Mr. Marcus Whitfield," the taller officer announced, "we have court documents to deliver." The crowd fell silent. Marcus accepted the envelope, opening it calmly. His face remained composed, but his hands gripped the paper tightly. Natalie appeared beside him, reading over her shoulder. Her audible sigh was enough to fill the room with tension. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, taking the microphone back, "please continue enjoying your evening. This is simply a routine legal matter." But the damage had already been done. Whispers spread among the guests. Cell phones were raised. Christine Reynolds was already typing frantically on her laptop. In a corner, the cell phone of Philip Montgomery, chairman of the board, vibrated. He opened the email, and the blood drained from his face. He showed the contents to the other council members, who gathered hastily, exchanging tense glances. The lawsuit, filed by Harrison Pembroke and his business circle, accused Marcus Whitfield of discrimination against white employees and irregular acquisition of corporate assets. The request for an injunction was clear: immediate suspension of his duties as director and CEO of the Grandeur Manhattan. Natalie discreetly pulled Marcus aside. "This was timed," she whispered. "They waited for the moment when you were most visible, most vulnerable." Before she could answer, Philip Montgomery approached. "Mr. Whitfield, the board demands an emergency meeting now." The celebratory evening dissolved into murmurs and hurried footsteps. Guests left the hall with their cell phones pressed to their ears, relaying the news even before the doors closed. Outside, the press cameras were already waiting, and Marcus Whitfield, at the center of the whole scene, realized that the war he thought he had won was only just beginning. Television cameras repositioned themselves to capture every detail of the drama. The lobby of the Grandeur Manhattan was buzzing with tension, and Evelyn Morrison tried to keep her team calm, instructing them to remain discreet. In the meeting room, the air was heavy, thick with distrust. On the table, the board members distributed copies of an anonymous letter that supposedly proved Marcus Whitfield had bribed New York City officials to expedite the hotel acquisition process. The document appeared legitimate. Official letterheads, perfect signatures, convincing stamps. "This is a hoax," Marcus stated, his voice firm. "Just another weapon in their smear campaign." "Even if that's the case," retorted Philip Montgomery, the chairman of the board, "the mere suspicion could destroy what's left of our reputation. The board has voted. You are suspended until the end of the investigation." Marcus stood up, straightening his jacket with dignity. "You're doing exactly what they wanted, giving in to fear." "Please, Mr. Whitfield," murmured another councillor, avoiding his gaze, "don't make this any more difficult than it already is. Security will escort you to the exit." The path through the hotel seemed endless. The new security guards, hastily hired by the council, followed him closely as Marcus walked silently to his penthouse. Employees watched from doorways and hallways, some with discreet tears in their eyes. Julian Carter, now removed from his position as head of security, stood erect, his jaw clenched. He could do nothing but silently salute as Marcus passed by. Evelyn clasped her hands together, her gaze fixed on the floor, a mix of prayer and despair. On the rooftop, Marcus packed his bags with mechanical movements. The panoramic windows reflected the flashing lights of the press vans, which were crowding the street. "Your car is waiting for you in the garage, sir," said one of the guards, in an almost apologetic tone. Before leaving, Marcus cast one last glance out the window. The city that had tested, wounded, and shaped him now seemed like a labyrinth of lights and judgments. The yellowish light from the porch illuminated the gate of her mother's house in the Queen's neighborhood. The single-story house, simple and impeccably maintained, seemed like a refuge from the chaos. Marcus stood in the car for a few seconds, taking a deep breath before grabbing his bag and heading towards the door. She opened the door before he could knock. Dorothy Whitfield was there, wearing a flowered dressing gown and a scarf tied around her grey hair. Her eyes examined him with tenderness and concern, the weariness in her son's gaze, the slight stumble of his leg, the signs of the struggle he was trying to hide. "My son," she said, opening her arms. He leaned in, embracing her. The sound of the suitcase falling to the floor echoed across the balcony. At that moment he wasn't the defeated businessman, he was just the boy returning to the safe embrace of his mother. "Come in, my dear," said Dorothy, taking the suitcase before he could protest. "I left dinner nice and warm." The familiar smell enveloped him. Cornbread, sauté kale, something sweet baking in the oven. The house seemed suspended in time, filled with photographs on the walls. Marcus as a child, his graduation, his framed diploma, the first news report about his company. "Sit here," she ordered, pointing to the table with its plates decorated with small blue flowers. "You need to eat." Marcus obeyed, exhausted, his muscles still aching. "Mom, you didn't need to worry." "Shh," she interrupted, placing the plate in front of him. "A mother always knows when her child needs to be fed before being comforted." They ate in silence for a few minutes. The clinking of cutlery filled the space between the unspoken words. Dorothy watched him stir his food, noticing the subtle tremor in his hands. "I saw it on the news," he said finally. "Those people from the hotel, they're the same as always. They change their clothes, they change their positions, but they're still the same people your father faced back then. It's different now, Mom. They don't wear hoods anymore, they wear suits and ties. The same hatred, just more sophisticated." "And yet it's the same devil," she replied firmly. "Do you remember what you told me when you were 12, after those boys tried to make you eat dirt?" A slight smile crossed Marcus's tired face. "I remember." "Then say it again." He took a deep breath. "I said I would never beg anyone to treat me like a human being, that I'd rather be alone than kneel before cowards." Dorothy reached across the table and shook his hand. "That's my son. And look at you now, business owner changing lives. They're afraid of you, Marcus. That's why they attack." He looked away, his voice breaking. They took everything, Mom. The hotel, my name, my reputation. They didn't take anything you can't get back, she replied, with the calm of someone who has seen the world crumble and rebuild itself more than once. In that simple kitchen, under the yellow light of the lamp, a man's fallen empire seemed to begin to rise again, sustained once more by the silent strength of a mother. Dorothy adjusted her glasses and added calmly, "His father always said, 'The truth is like cream, my son. You can swirl the glass all you want, but it always rises to the surface.'" She placed her hand on his. "You have good people on your side. That kind lady, Evelyn, stopped by earlier to see how you were doing. And that young man, Julian." Marcus looked up. "They were here?" "Yes. They said they had something important to show you. They're coming early tomorrow." Dorothy stood up and took a golden sweet potato pie out of the oven. "Now you're going to eat a piece of food, take a hot bath, and sleep in your old room. Tomorrow is another day." Later, Marcus lay in his old bed, gazing at the ceiling where the same stars that shone in the darkness still twinkled 20 years later. His mother's words mingled with memories of his father, his deep voice, his advice on dignity and patience. Sleep came slowly, but it came. The morning arrived filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and cornbread baking in the oven. Marcus was helping his mother clear the dishes when there was a knock at the door. Evelyn Morrison stood on the balcony, elegant even in simple clothes, holding a bulky briefcase. Behind her, Julian Carter balanced a battered laptop and a stack of flash drives. "Mr. Whitfield," Evelyn began, quickly correcting herself. "I mean, Marcus. We've already analyzed everything." Dorothy greeted them with a warm smile, and without ceremony led them into the kitchen. "Hot coffee and sweet potato pie are on the table. Sit down and do what you need to do. I'll be in the garden, tending to my flowers." The kitchen had turned into a veritable war room. Julian turned on his laptop, connecting the devices, while Evelyn spread out piles of documents, organized by date and meticulous notes. "This is the hotel's old security system," Julian explained, typing quickly. "They never deleted the files when they modernized the system. The hard drives kept everything, years of recordings, including audio." Evelyn opened her worn notebook, filled with scribbles and dates. "And I documented everything I saw. 23 years of notes, every insult, every unfair dismissal, every abuse, all with names, times, and witnesses." Marcus leaned across the table. The energy that abandonment and shame had drained was beginning to return. There, the truth lay, concrete, organized, indisputable, living proof against the farce they had orchestrated. The sun streamed in through the window, bathing the table covered with papers and cables in golden light. Outside, Dorothy hummed an old gospel song, a gentle melody about victory and faith. Shortly before noon, Natalie Sterling arrived, bringing her own laptop and a suitcase full of external hard drives. She hugged Marcus tightly before settling down next to Julian. The table was now cluttered with technology and the past, cables, coffee beans and souvenirs all mixed together. "You won't believe what we found," Julian said as the screens flickered. The hotel's analog system recorded everything. And not just images, audio as well. They never erased anything. Marcus leaned forward, his heart racing as the first video began to play. The screen showed the lobby of the Grandeur Manhattan from various angles. The images, even though old, were clear. There he was, calm, approaching the reception area to speak with Jennifer Caldwell. "Look at this," Natalie murmured, pointing. "Now you can hear what they were saying." In the recording, Derek Ashford appeared behind the counter, observing coldly. "Watch out. One of them is coming in. You know what to do." Jennifer replied with a cynical smile. "No reservations, right? Even if there are any." "Exactly. Make him lose his temper or disappear. Either way, we win." Evelyn clenched her fists. "They always did this. They created traps to provoke reactions and then called it a threat." Julian switched files. Look at this one. On screen, Derek appeared in a back room, reunited with his former security team. If he tries to record, grab your cell phone. Make it look like he attacked first. Vincent, you know where to hit so you don't appear on camera. My God, Natalie whispered, taking it all in. They rehearsed the ambush. The following images were brutal. They showed angles that had never been shown in the reports. The laughter of the security guards, Derek's cold stare, the sound of Jennifer's racist insults. But what came next surpassed the scandal. A video of the hotel's executive suite, recorded without anyone's knowledge. Harrison Pembroke's voice echoed through the kitchen, heavy with arrogance. This Whitfield guy thinks he can just come in and take what's ours. We've kept this hotel pure for generations, and no amount of money will change who he is. On screen, he was handing out envelopes containing cash to businessmen and intermediaries. Bribe whoever you need to. City Hall, inspectors, the press. I want this man ruined before the end of the week. The silence that followed in the kitchen was absolute. Marcus looked at the three of them, Evelyn, Julian, Natalie, and finally understood what he had in his hands. That was not just proof of his innocence, it was the end of their empire. The camera captured Harrison Pembroke clearly, seated at the head of a luxurious table as he coldly explained the plan to ruin Marcus Whitfield. The forged bribery letter is the key, he said, staring at his accomplices. Make it look like he's been bribing people at City Hall for years. The council will have no choice. They'll expel him unanimously. Natalie Sterling paused the video, her face torn between anger and relief. We did it! It's all here! The complete conspiracy, discrimination, aggression, bribery, fraud. Wait, interrupted Julian Carter, clicking on another file. There's more. On screen, Harrison's secretary appeared alone in the executive office of the Grandeur Manhattan, practicing signatures and drafting the forged document on a laptop. Look at this, said Julian, enlarging the image. We have proof that the letter was forged, and that it never left their hands. Marcus stood up and walked through his mother's kitchen, his heart racing. How many years of recordings do we have? At least 5 years of continuous filming, Julian replied, and some older footage, 15 years perhaps. It all coincides with Evelyn's records. She opened her notebook, now filled with notes marked up over decades. Every insult, every unfair dismissal, everything recorded, dates, times, witnesses, and now filmed. Natalie was already typing on her cell phone, her voice firm and controlled. Sarah Mitchell, this is Natalie Sterling. We need an urgent meeting with your team from the federal prosecutor's office. Yes, today. We have evidence of discrimination, conspiracy, and bribery within the hotel. He paused for a moment, listening for the reply from the other side. They can see us in 2 hours, he announced, covering the phone. We need to organize everything, videos, reports, metadata. I want the images clean and ready for display. Julian was already typing quickly. I'm downloading the files to secure drives. I'll also make copies in the cloud. They won't be able to delete anything this time. Marcus took a deep breath. Natalie, get the communications team involved. We'll need to plan the outreach. The impact has to be maximum, but legal and transparent. I'm already taking care of it, she replied, sending messages. Let's keep the evidence until the board meeting. Let them formalize their resignation, and then we'll show everything, all at once. Julian smiled. It's going to be chaos. White businessmen caught on video, conspiring to destroy a black entrepreneur, with visual evidence, sounds, dates, and signatures. The perfect storm. At that moment, Dorothy Whitfield appeared in the doorway, balancing a tray of sandwiches and a pitcher of lemonade. I warned you the truth would come out, she said with a serene smile. Now eat something. No one faces evil on an empty stomach. Soft laughter broke the tension. Natalie ended the call and immediately started another. Randall Foster, assemble our legal team. We'll need civil and criminal actions and injunctions. Yes, All at the same time. We have enough evidence to bring down an empire." They worked tirelessly, transforming the kitchen table into a headquarters of justice. Each video was categorized as follows: discrimination, aggression, conspiracy, corruption. Each file was time and date stamped, validated by Evelyn's records. What was once hidden in forgotten vaults and servers is now coming to light. And the name, the Grandeur Manhattan, once a symbol of tradition and power, was about to become synonymous with scandal. Hours later, the hotel's main hall was bustling with activity. The Administrative Council met in an extraordinary session. Sunlight streamed through the glass windows, reflecting off the tailored suits of the directors, the flashes of the cameras, and the lenses of the reporters from the New York television stations. Harrison Pembroke, impeccable, smiled confidently as he whispered something to his lawyer. He believed he was about to witness the ultimate downfall of Marcus Whitfield. But next to the wall, discreet and attentive, were the FBI agents. The atmosphere was tense, muffled murmurs, the creaking of chairs, the expectation of a public execution disguised as a corporate meeting. "I declare this emergency session of the Grandeur Manhattan Council open," announced Philip Montgomery, adjusting his glasses. "We are here to address the formal charges against Mr. Marcus Whitfield and to deliberate on his removal from office." The double doors opened. Marcus entered with a firm posture, wearing his now restored brown leather jacket. Beside him, Natalie carried a laptop and folders full of evidence. Behind them came Evelyn, in a lilac dress and with a serene look, and Julian, in a dark suit, each step measured. Finally came Patricia Drake, the former white manager, pale but determined. Silence fell over the hall. Harrison Pembroke looked at her, surprised. And for the first time in decades, the most powerful man in New York felt the true weight of fear. Harrison Pembroke's smile faltered as he watched her enter. He didn't expect Patricia Drake to have the courage to show up. "Mr. Whitfield," Philip Montgomery began, attempting to maintain formality, "given the seriousness of the allegations—" "Excuse me," Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "Before any judgment is made, I would like to present some evidence." He signaled to Natalie Sterling, who connected the laptop to the room's projection system. "The council heard one version of the facts," Marcus said, adjusting the microphone. "Now it's time for the truth." Harrison stood up, adjusting his tie with feigned authority. "This is highly irregular. We have an agenda." "Sit down, Mr. Pembroke," ordered one of the FBI agents. The tycoon paled, but obeyed. The lights went out. The screen took over the room. Crystal-clear security camera footage began to roll in. Derek Ashford and Jennifer Caldwell plotting to prevent Marcus from checking in. The security guards rehearsing the attack, and then the brutal beating filmed from multiple angles. "Every word was recorded," Marcus said calmly. "Every insult, every order, every act of violence." The video fast-forwarded, now showing the secret meetings at the Circle of Fifth Avenue. Harrison's voice echoed through the hall, cold and calculated, detailing schemes involving bribery, blackmail, and sabotage. The camera showed him handling envelopes containing cash, instructing his accomplices on which authorities to corrupt. Some of the council members looked away. A reporter choked. Harrison's lawyer scribbled frantically, trying to contain the inevitable. "But this is just the beginning," Marcus continued. "We have years of evidence, discrimination, harassment, fraud. Everything is documented." Natalie projected other videos, each one more devastating than the last. Evelyn Morrison stepped forward, holding her worn notebooks. "I recorded everything," she said, her voice firm. "Dates, names, witnesses, everything confirmed by the recordings." Julian Carter added, "The old security system stored everything on forgotten servers." They never imagined that the cameras themselves would be their witnesses. Harrison jumped out of his chair. Lies, manipulated images. All authenticated by FBI experts, the lead agent interrupted. Every frame is genuine. The room was filled with murmurs. Cell phones vibrated with alerts about breaking headlines. Several members of the Circle of Fifth Avenue tried to leave, but agents were already blocking the doors. That's when Patricia Drake stood up. "I was there," she said, her voice trembling at first, but firm soon after. "For years I watched it all happen. The humiliations, the manipulations, the absurd orders. I stayed silent so I wouldn't lose my job, and I regret it to this day." She looked directly at Harrison. "I saw you forge the bribery letter. I saw the secret meetings where you decided to destroy Mr. Whitfield's name." Harrison turned as pale as marble. "You're lying," he roared. "We have a recording of your assistant typing the fake document," Natalie said, clicking on another video. The screen showed the secretary typing the letter, Harrison's voice in the background. "Use this template. I want something that looks official." The agents advanced. "Harrison Pembroke," the special agent announced in a firm voice, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, discrimination, and active corruption. The same applies to the other members of your group." The room exploded in flashes. TV cameras trembled in the reporters' hands. Some business owners tried to hide their faces. Others remained motionless, petrified. Philip Montgomery seemed unable to speak. When she finally succeeded, her voice was a whisper. "Mr. Whitfield, we had no idea." "You could have asked," Marcus replied calmly. "They could have listened to their own teams. They could have looked beyond appearances." He looked at Evelyn and Julian. "These people have been trying to warn you for years." The officers led Harrison Pembroke away in handcuffs. The tycoon's mask, the tone of superiority and dominance, it dissolved into a look of pure fear. "You'll regret this," he hissed as he passed. "No," Marcus replied softly. "You already regret it." More agents entered, collecting computers, documents, and hard drives. The FBI filled the room like an inescapable tide. Outside, helicopters were flying over the Grandeur Manhattan, while the electronic billboards on Fifth Avenue were already displaying the headlines. "Scandal at the Grandeur Manhattan. Business circle arrested in federal operation." Inside the now restored office, Marcus Whitfield observed everything through the screens. Images of corrupt individuals being led away in handcuffs were repeated across all channels, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled, not like someone who won a battle, but as if one had finally seen the truth rise to the surface. New York television stations aired excerpts from the security recordings during prime time. The images, raw and undeniable, revealed what no one could hide anymore: racism, violence, and abuse of power. Natalie Sterling entered Marcus Whitfield's office, carrying a stack of newspapers that still smelled of fresh ink. "The council's statement has just been released," she said, handing over the copy from above. Marcus scanned the headline. "The Grandeur Manhattan announces CEO reinstatement after scandal and promises new era of transparency." Below, a photo showed Vanessa Coleman, a board member, in the middle of the meeting that resulted in the unanimous vote for Marcus's return. Now with expanded powers over management, hiring, and inclusion policies. "They had no choice," commented Evelyn Morrison, sitting near the window. She was wearing an elegant grey suit, appropriate for her new position as Director of Employee Relations. The evidence was too strong to be denied. The door opened, and Julian Carter entered, impeccably dressed in his black uniform. "Mr. Whitfield," he announced, "the FBI has confirmed Derek Ashford and Jennifer Caldwell are under arrest. They will be charged with discrimination, assault, and falsifying records." And what about Vincent Braddock and the rest of the security team? Indicted for assault and falsifying a police report. The National Security Association has already revoked all of their licenses. They will never work in the field again. Shortly after, Patricia Drake appeared holding a folder labeled Whistleblower Protection Protocols. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was firm. The legal team approved everything. The new reporting procedures are ready to be implemented. Marcus stood up, gathering the four of them around the conference table. Let's review tonight's speech. Every word has to be perfect. For an hour they adjusted phrases, tested tones, and reviewed data. The new guidelines would be historic, hiring with equity criteria, mandatory diversity programs, and an educational fund for employees' children, named in honor of the woman who never gave up on the truth, Evelyn Morrison. I still can't believe you gave my name to this, she said emotionally, touching the document. Who else would deserve it? Marcus replied, smiling. You kept records for 20 years, waiting for the day someone would finally listen. A knock on the door interrupted them. A young employee appeared, nervous but excited. Sir, the lobby is filling up. The press has arrived, and there are important people from the communities outside. Marcus looked at his watch. Then it's time. He adjusted his jacket and headed for the elevator, accompanied by his team. The main lobby had been transformed. The somber portraits of the former owners had been replaced by a vibrant gallery of African-American and contemporary art. The old colonial armchairs gave way to modern furniture, and the employees, in new, comfortable and dignified uniforms, circulated smiling, with pride. The television cameras followed Marcus as he descended the grand staircase. Reporters shouted questions, microphones raised, but he waited until he reached the podium set up next to the reception area, the same place where he had been humiliated and assaulted days before. Good evening, he began, his voice firm but serene. Today is not just a change in management. It's the end of an era of silence and the beginning of a new way of understanding what luxury, dignity, and respect are. He paused. The entire room fell silent. Behind him, Natalie, Julian, Patricia, and Evelyn watched, moved. These people here with me have faced what many call the impossible. They gave a voice to those who had never been heard, and they showed that when justice awakens, no one can stop it. Marcus announced the new programs and policies one by one. With each measure, applause echoed through the hall. But when she revealed the Evelyn Morrison Educational Fund, the emotion overflowed. The honoree brought her hands to her face, tears streaming down her face, while the audience rose to their feet in applause. The old guard thought they owned more than this building, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. They thought they had the right to decide who could or could not belong in this place. Today, we return this space to those who supported its pillars with work, sweat, and faith. The flashes of the cameras illuminated the moment he raised the hotel's new charter, with explicit clauses protecting and ensuring equality for employees and guests. The Grandeur Manhattan will be a beacon of justice, memory, and dignity. This is not just a hotel, it's a promise. The promise that the days of veiled discrimination and power without accountability are over. In the middle of the crowd, former employees were crying. NGO leaders, union members, and artists applauded, moved by the event. Even some of the council members, still shaken, let out a genuine smile. Julian leaned in and murmured to Evelyn, "Look at their faces. They never imagined they would see this day." "Neither do we," she replied, wiping away her tears. "But hope, that never left us." The lobby of the Grandeur Manhattan erupted in applause as Marcus Whitfield prepared to answer questions from the press. The late afternoon light streamed through the glass windows, bathing the space where prejudice once reigned with a new glow. the light of justice, delayed for decades, but finally achieved. The following morning, the New York sun filtered through the tall windows, casting golden reflections onto the freshly polished marble. The hotel pulsed with life, not with the old, cold ostentation, but with a welcoming, human, authentic energy. Marcus watched from the reception area with a discreet smile. A black family was checking in and was greeted warmly. A group of businesswomen from the South were enthusiastically discussing an inclusion event in the main hall. Elderly couples and young employees exchanged tips about restaurants and theaters in Manhattan. The transformation was visible in every detail. The walls now displayed works by African American and Native American artists, depicting stories that had never before been given space. The employees' uniforms were redesigned, lightweight, modern, with no trace of the colonial past. "Good morning, Mr. Whitfield," said Angela Hughes, a cleaning supervisor promoted by Evelyn. He pushed his cart with pride, his name tag hanging there, clearly visible, finally visible. "Good morning, Angela. And your son? Has he enrolled in college yet?" "Yes, sir. Thanks to the Evelyn Morrison Educational Fund, he was accepted into 3 universities. Marcus smiled and placed his hand on her shoulder. "That's exactly why it was all worth it." The reception area, once a scene of humiliation, now radiated transparency and respect. Julian Carter had installed a modern security system, with cameras positioned at wide, visible angles, protecting guests and employees. The rights and equality policy was printed on the murals in 5 languages. Near the entrance, Marcus noticed an elderly woman trying to pull a heavy suitcase. He approached, his brown leather jacket reflecting the soft light. "Allow me to help, ma'am." She smiled, surprised and grateful. "Oh, thank you so much, my son. These training wheels are no longer usable." "This hotel wasn't good before either, but now we've fixed that too," he replied, with gentle humor. While he was helping her, Marcus's gaze fell upon the new wall of portraits. In the center, Evelyn Morrison, with her dignified smile. On the left, Julian Carter, with a firm and protective posture. On the right, Patricia Drake, with the serene gaze of someone who has redeemed her own past. And surrounding them, dozens of faces of employees, men and women of all backgrounds, forming a mosaic of achievements. "Mr. Whitfield," called Julian, approaching with a group of visitors. "People from the tourism sector came to learn about our new safety protocols." "Perfect timing," he replied, handing the lady's bag to a messenger. "We are especially proud of our transparency." During the guided tour, Marcus showed us new public monitors, accessible security records, and audit reports that were open to the public. No one lowered their voice in front of superiors. No one looked away. The fear that had previously hung over the hotel had disappeared. Near the main staircase, Patricia Drake was giving a training session to the new hires. "Remember," he stated clearly, "all complaints from guests or employees are recorded and reviewed. No exceptions, no privileges." While he was speaking, a group of conference attendees arrived in the lobby. Marcus watched with satisfaction the coordinated flow of service, each employee moving with confidence and purpose. Evelyn approached, her burgundy blazer reflecting her new leadership position. "Time for the team photo," she reminded him with a proud smile. In the garden courtyard, where previously only elite events took place, there were now open community gatherings. The employees gathered in a large semicircle, mixing departments and positions without distinction. Julian adjusted his name tag, Patricia straightened her committee pin, and Marcus stood in the center. "Look at the family we've built," whispered Evelyn emotionally. The photographer, an artist who had documented social and labor struggles, raised his camera. The photo captured not just a group of people, but a symbol of a country in transformation. After the photo, Marcus remained alone for a moment. The marble still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled, but now they reflected the truth, no longer the lies. Suddenly, a little girl ran across the hallway. It was 6-year-old Olivia Morrison, Evelyn's granddaughter. She hugged his legs enthusiastically. "Uncle Marcus, Grandma said you did all this so everyone could be happy here." Marcus knelt down, smiling. "It was her too when she was little. We did it together." "One day I'm going to work here," Olivia said proudly, "just like Grandma." "And you'll start from the top," he promised, laughing, "not from the bottom like she had to start." The morning light flooded the lobby, warming the air with a serene glow. Where fear and injustice once reigned, dignity and hope now flourished. The story didn't end there. It was only the beginning of a new legacy. There are stories that are not just told, they are lived. What happened inside the Grandeur Manhattan is more than a change in management. It's a reminder that justice, when it finally arrives, illuminates even the places where there was once only silence and fear. How many times have you witnessed an injustice and felt that nothing could change? This story proves the opposite. The truth may take time, but it always finds the right way to come out. Every gesture, every voice that refused to be silenced built this new beginning. Now I want to know from you, which city or country are you watching from? Share in the comments and tell us how this story touched you. Leave a like so that more people can learn about the power of transformation and be inspired to fight for what is right. And subscribe to the channel to continue following stories of courage, justice, and new beginnings.